So, you want to get into off-roading or maybe even overlanding, but the price tag of a brand new Jeep Gladiator or 4Runner TRD Pro seems a bit out of control? Well, why not look at some of these vehicles that'll get you started under $15,000 so you can start the build off right and not completely break the bank on something that's going to end up taking off-road abuse anyway. Hey, what's up guys? My name is Jason, and today I want to talk to you guys about my top 15 favorite off-road vehicles for under $15,000. I found everything that I'll list here today on Auto Tempest. It takes basically every single site that you would normally use to look for cars or vehicles, trucks, anything like that, and it puts it all in one location. So I'll link that below, and you guys should check that out. Alright guys, so the first one we're going to be talking about today is the 4Runner, the 3rd and 4th gen. This is a great all-around mid-size off-road SUV. A really great generation to look for is the 3rd gen, which ran from 95 to 2002. 01 was the first to offer a rear E-locker. You can find a lot of these for under $10,000, so if you really want to keep costs down, this might be something you really want to look for. Another one you might want to look into is the 4th gen, which ran from the years of 2002 to 2009. This is still going to get you in under $15,000 in most situations, so you will start to see a few of these lower mileage ones creep into and above $15,000. But if you want to get one for cheap, don't worry about miles as much because Toyotas can take many miles on them and still be perfectly fine. So the cool thing about these years is that they offered a V8 in some models, which you can't find in any of the 5th gens. When looking into these, avoid the pre-runner version of these because these are 2-wheel drive. If you can, try to find anything with the TRD badging. This is Toyota Racing Development. This badging can mean a bunch of different things for different models, but it's usually going to be the most off-road capable. So another thing that you can look into is the 1st gen Tacoma. This is pretty similar to the 4Runner, but this is the pickup truck version. There are 2 generations that you'll be able to find under this mark, and that's the 1st gen and some of the 2nd generations. The 1st gen is from 1995 to 2004, and the 2nd generation ran from 05 to 2015. These have gone back up recently as the word has gotten out to new folks about this platform's capabilities and the value for your dollar. Super reliable and very nimble. These things hold on to their value and last forever. A 20-year-old Tacoma can still run you around $10,000 to $15,000, but will probably last you another 20 years. This has tons of aftermarket support, and honestly, it's one of my favorite looking mid-size trucks. Same as the 4Runner, look for any type of TRD badging when you can. The 1st generation, you'll be able to find a lot of these under $15,000. But for the 2nd generation, you'll start to see a good many of these creeping above that threshold. The Lexus GX 470. This SUV is the epitome of luxury V8 for cheap. Similar to the 5th gen 4Runner, but much cheaper. The GX 470 ran from 2003 to 2009, but almost all of these will be found for under $15,000 unless you run into a very low mileage one. In my opinion, this is the best all-around off-road vehicle on this list in terms of value for your dollar. It's basically similar to the Land Cruiser Prado, but actually more of a luxury version of it. This engine is a 1,000,000-mile engine, so you can feel safe buying a slightly higher mileage version of this vehicle. This thing is built to last. While this vehicle does not have an E-locker like many of the new 4Runner models, it's going to have A-Track, which is very similar to the SR5 version of the 5th gen 4Runner, but for about half the price. The F-150 10th through the 12th generation. You can find so many of these used, and really they're awesome off-road trucks and come in different configurations, so you can find the right one for your needs. For the 10th gens, have a 4.6 liter V8, super reliable and very cheap. For the 12th gens, you can get great examples of this truck for under $15,000 in the lower end of the generations. So usually 09 to about 2012, you can find below that, and and then the 13 and 14 models, you'll start to see a few of those crest above that 15,000 mark. I would personally stick with the 10th and 11th with lower miles and in better shape, rather than going with a 12th generation with higher miles. Make sure you go with one of the 4-wheel drive options because there are a surprising amount of 2-wheel drive F-150s out there. The Tundra, another great full-size off-road truck but with Toyota's excellent reliability. These things hold on their value like crazy, and they hold on for hundreds of thousands of miles, so you can find a ton of them with lots of miles on them. But for something within the lower 100,000 mile range, you can get a really great Tundra that's going to last you forever. For under $15,000 budget, you're probably going to find a lot of these in the 2000 to 2008 range. This includes the first generation and a bit of the second generation. These things get a ton of miles out of their engine, and I've seen a few videos online with Tundras over 1 million miles. The Tundra, just like with other Toyotas, has a great aftermarket support. TJ Jeep. I wasn't going to include any Wranglers because these things hold on to their value like crazy, but older models can really be a great bargain. You can find a few JK Wranglers at this price, but you're starting to run into a bunch that are over $15,000. The TJ ran from 1997 to 2006, and for the most part, you can find great deals on many of these, and some of them are already even built out. For the most part, I like to say built, not bought, but when talking about budget, we can let that one slide. Jeeps are known as a major player in the off-road game, but sometimes their reliability isn't always the best, and their on-road performance leaves a lot to the imagination. Still a great option for someone who is looking to get something to rip off-road but doesn't want to spend a crazy amount of money. Xterra. If you want something like the 5th Gen 4Runner, but you want even more for your budget, look into the Xterra, a good solid V6. Nissan's been slipping over the years, but this one fell right into that category where they were still doing really good things. You can basically find most of these under $15,000 right up to the last years of it. We're talking about 1999 to 2015. Sometimes these things will get compared to the more expensive 4Runner, especially if you get the Pro 4X edition, you're going to be just as capable. The Pro 4X is what I'd go for if you can find it for the right price. The Pro 4X is very similar to the TRD Off-Road in the Toyota 4Runner. The aftermarket support for this is pretty decent. Where I live, there's even a few shops dedicated to just Nissan 4x4 aftermarket. The Frontier. While we're talking about Nissan, we might as well not leave out the Frontier. This is going to be pretty similar to the Xterra in terms of offerings. I like to consider the Xterra and the Frontier a pretty good comparison to the Toyota 4Runner and the Tacoma. I'd also try to look for the Pro 4X in this one. It has a rear locker, skids, and a much better engine. If you really want to stick to a budget, this thing is pretty capable on its own, but the aftermarket support is good enough that you won't want to keep it stock for long. The Mitsubishi Montero. So for Mitsubishi, the Montero 2nd and 3rd Gen are going to be great options. This is probably one of the cheaper and more capable ones on this list, and somehow I rarely see these on the road. This thing was a Dakar winner with over 150 wins. Some of these had lockers on the 2nd Gen. It's a giant SUV, so it has a nice 3.6 liter V6 to fight its sluggishness. This one is a full-size SUV and the bigger brother to the Montero Sport. A lot of these you'll be able to find for under $15,000, and many of them even under $10,000. They're great to start off with, but you can pretty easily modify these to be off-road beasts. The big downside of them is there really just isn't that many of them. They're not very common, and when you find a good one, you need to jump on it. The Expedition. This is going to push you more into the overland category rather than a true off-roader. If you want a full-size SUV, but you have to have American, the Expedition is a really great way to go. It's a V8 which really helps with its giant body, and I would say it's most similar to the Toyota Sequoia. For the 1st Gen, you can usually find for less than $5,000, but the second gens are right in that sweet spot. And you can get an early model third gen for around $15,000 or less and not get something super old. These things are very similar to the F-150 in size, but you can actually carry a lot more stuff in the back if you're more of an overlander. Ranger third generation. So while we're talking about Ford, the Ford Ranger is a small truck that has been around forever. The third generation was offered from 1998 to 2012 and is my recommendation for the best value for your dollar. FX4 is the offering very similar to the TRD or the Pro 4X. These little trucks are super popular, but not as big in the off-roading community. You can find a lot cheaper than the Tacoma. Almost all of these you'll be able to find for under $15,000 unless they're already built out or super low miles. The real downside for Americans is that from 2011 to 2019, there was no production in the US. So basically you've got to pick from the 1990s until 2011. And if your price range is a little bit higher, you can go with one of the new ones. You could also go with the 80s models if you can find any in good shape, but I would stick to the 90s if you can. The first gen Sequoia. This full-size SUV is based off the Tundra pickup. The first generation ran until 2007 and honestly is one of the best off-roaders for the more overlanding style. It's a V8, so it's got enough power to actually move its giant body. It has a lot of the same parts as the Tundra, so there's a decent aftermarket support for this one. It has a center locking differential, so it's actually a pretty solid four-wheel drive. And if you like the 4Runner roll-down window in the back, you've got that in this as well. With the press of a button, you've got your rear window down just like your sides. So it's great if you like to off-road with dogs, and one of my favorite things about the 5th generation, 4th generation, and 3rd generation 4Runners. The Suzuki Samurai. The Suzuki Samurai is an amazing little off-roader that has become harder and harder to find. This is a nimble 2-door box with a great approach and departure angle. It's a little 4-cylinder engine that's actually pretty easy to work on. The downside of the 4-cylinder is that as soon as you throw some big tires on it, it's going to be bogged down on the highway. There are ways to swap out the engine to give you more power, but I'll let you research that on your own because I'm sure there's more informed people out there on that subject. But anyways, if you can find one of these and it's in good shape, go ahead and buy it. The Suburban. The Suburban is a great American SUV that has been on the road forever. In fact, this was my first truck in high school. I had a 1999 with a 5.7 liter, but the next generation has a 5.3 Vortec V8, which is really reliable and probably your best bet. Some models even had locking differentials. Has buttons for 2-wheel drive, normal highway, 4 high and 4 low. Pretty much everything you need, but no cool manual transfer case shifter like a lot of other vehicles. These things are huge and have plenty of room inside to haul whatever gear you need. So this is a really great option for the overland guys. Overall, this thing is pretty standard 4-wheel drive, nothing too fancy, but there were millions of these things made and they aren't super hard to find. The Jeep Cherokee XJ. So I couldn't make a list of off-roaders and only have one Jeep. So I'm going with honestly my favorite Jeep product in this category, the Jeep XJ. It's got a 4.0 liter inline 6 that's decently, well, let's say resistant but not bulletproof. This SUV style Jeep has lots of aftermarket support just like many Jeeps. Similarly capable to the Wrangler but with tons more room in the back for whatever stuff you need to bring along with you. Parts for these Jeeps are super cheap and the aftermarket support is really good. I mean, it's a Jeep, it's gonna have a lot of aftermarket support. The XJ Cherokee ran from the years 1984 to 2001, so you've got a lot of models to choose from.
So, which one would I pick? Well, I think if I was picking anything on this list, I would go with the Lexus GX 470. It's pretty similar to my 4Runner, but it doesn't have the locking rear differential, so I mean, it's not that much of a thing that I use all the time. So I think that, yeah, with A-Track, basically it being a luxury vehicle and a high mileage engine, I'm pretty sure it's probably one of the best ones on this list, and honestly, if I had to do it again, I think I might go that route. But anyways, guys, thanks for stopping by and checking this out. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a like below. If you like what I'm doing, consider subscribing. But anyways, that's it for me, guys. I will see you guys in the next one.